Mr. Uncanny lived in an uncanny house, full of uncanny things. There was an uncanny lamp, an uncanny mirror. There was even an uncanny cupboard. One day there was a knock on the door. It was Mr. Brick the builder. "Hello, Mr. Uncanny," said Mr. Brick. "Have you seen Mr. Yeast the baker? He's gone missing."
"No,"
said Mr. Uncanny.
"I have not seen the baker."
"Are you sure?" said Mr. Brick. "He said he was delivering some bread to you."
"Why don't you come inside?"
said Mr. Uncanny.
"We can talk about it in here."
Once inside, Mr. Brick saw something in Mr. Uncanny's kitchen. "That's the bread Mr. Yeast bakes," said Mr. Brick.
"I can't see it,"
said Mr. Uncanny. "Well, it's right here on your kitchen table. In your house."
"We're not in my house,"
said Mr. Uncanny, and he blinked his eye. And Mr. Brick realized he was right. They weren't in his house anymore. They were in some sort of dark nether world. Mr. Uncanny walked towards Mr. Brick in a very uncanny way. And Mr. Brick started to disappear into total darkness. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. And a moment later, he completely disappeared. Outside, Mrs. Sprout, the grocer, was being nosy, looking around Mr. Uncanny's garden.
"There's nothing to see here,"
said Mr. Uncanny.
"There's blood on the grass,"
said Mrs. Sprout.
"I'm calling the police."
Mr. Uncanny raised his arms in an uncanny way.
"What are you doing?"
asked Mrs. Sprout.
"This is what you're going to look like in a moment,"
said Mr. Uncanny, and he blinked his eye. Mrs. Sprout's head bent at a funny angle, and her arms moved, and then she just went up into the air. "I saw what you did," said a voice. It was Mr. Spanner, the mechanic, who had been watching from behind a bush.
"Oh, be quiet,"
said Mr. Uncanny, and he blinked his eye. Mr. Spanner was suddenly grabbed by a large, uncanny hand and dragged into an invisible portal. Mr. Uncanny laughed and laughed.
"How uncanny,"
he chuckled.
"How very uncanny."
The next day there was another knock on the door. It was Mr. Law, the policeman. But Mr. Uncanny was nowhere to be seen, and his house was now completely empty. "How uncanny," said the policeman. "It's as if Mr. Uncanny never lived here at all." And as the policeman drove away, he failed to see a dog walking down the road, because if he had, he would have noticed. It was a very uncanny dog indeed.